If first quarter sales are any indication, beauty may be recession-proof. 70% of shoppers say they're not cutting back on beauty spending, even with inflation pressure, according to a recent Circana survey. Larissa, Jensen, Circana beauty industry advisor, joins us now with a deeper dive into first quarter beauty trends. Larissa, so 70% of respondents saying they're not cutting back. What makes beauty so recession-proof?
Well, I think it's that consumers are going to make choices that reflect what's important to them, right? So if you think about beauty products, they bring joy. It's a universal aspiration and goal. Now, if you look at the results for quarter one in terms of beauty, we look at the market in two different ways. So there is the mass market. So these would be beauty products that are sold in food, drug, and mass channels. And then there's the prestige market. And these are beauty products that are sold in department stores and specialty stores. And when you look at the performance for so far in the quarter, you can see that statistic about the 70%. It's showing through there with double-digit growth happening across both the mass and prestige markets. So that is a very positive sign. What's really interesting, though, is when you dig beneath that level of dollar growth and you look at unit growth, what's happening is that the prestige market is actually what's growing faster. It's growing units double digits so far this quarter. And in the mass market, we're seeing a unit performance actually somewhat flat, which means that the growth we're seeing in the mass side of the market is really driven by average prices. So when you think back of what does that mean? It does tie into that treat mindset. And it really is, lipstick is one of those things. You think about the lipstick index. You've heard of that. I'm not sure. But basically that says if, consumer sentiment starts to decline, they look for that pick-me-up and they look for a way to make themselves feel better. Like I had said, beauty brings joy. But what's interesting is that we saw that playing out across all of the categories. So as you can see, we're seeing growth across makeup, skincare, fragrance, hair products. Consumers are turning to these products as a way to enhance their mental wellness.
Well, listen, we could have a whole philosophical and cultural discussion over that phrase, beauty brings joy. And yes, it's a loaded one, but it's not that kind of show, as they would say. So, Larissa, what's interesting to me is you talk about the difference between prestige and mass market and what's happening with the price side on mass market. I mean, that's happening on the prestige side as well in terms of pricing, is it not? In other words, because of innovation in the beauty industry, we talked to somebody yesterday, for example, at Oddity, which owns Il Maquillage and Spoiled Child, and they talked about the development of new molecules and yada yada for beauty. I mean, that too, we're seeing some pretty significant price increases on the prestige side now.
So yes, we are, but at a total level, the average prices for prestige are actually somewhat flat. Now, if you look down and you look at makeup versus skincare versus fragrance, you're going to see some fluctuations there, and you're going to see, fragrances have a much higher increase in average price than, say, skincare does, right? But I think what's really interesting when you look at the dynamics of prestige beauty and that unit performance, I think says so much, right? Circana tracks $3 trillion of consumer spend. We're looking at CPG industries like grocery. We're looking at general merchandise industries like apparel and technology and toys. Only prestige beauty grew units in 2022 and is growing units so far in 2023 across all of those industries. So you could see some of those industries are growing in dollars, but none of them are growing in units with the exception of prestige beauty.
Are there certain categories that are growing more than others? I mean, you mentioned that they're all growing, but when it comes to makeup versus skincare versus hair care versus fragrance, is there one that's beating out the other?
Yes, and it's something that we have been anticipating and expecting, but makeup is the number one fastest growing category across both the prestige market and the mass market. So it's growing double digits in both. And it's also one of the few categories that is growing units in both mass and prestige. So that is number one, hands down, the fastest growing category. That is actually followed by fragrances. I talked a little bit about that shift in that mental wellness component, fragrances has really fallen into that. Consumers are looking to fragrances as a way of, meeting it's as a form of self-care, I should say. So we know that consumers are going to scents to lift their mood, to provide that wellness benefit is what they're looking for. So fragrances is the next strongest category, followed by skincare and hair.
Look forward for us to close us out here, Larissa. Is this going to continue? Typically, if we actually enter a recession, how well do these trends hold up?
So last year, when we saw a big dip in consumer sentiment, is when we started to see that increase in lipstick sales, right? And then as consumer sentiment started to pick up at the end of last year, we saw a continued growth. So it's almost like, our industry is so resilient. Whether, we go into a recession or not, either way, we will probably be seeing some strong growth from the beauty industry, regardless of any headwinds that swirl around us.
All right, we'll be watching these companies. Thanks for your perspective, Larissa. Larissa Jensen, Circana Beauty Industry Advisor. Thanks.